All right, an Australian couple had a wedding crasher that was more than welcome to make an appearance.
Ladies and gentlemen, the first dance as husband and wife. Bring in the wedding singer, please. Here he is.
A bride froze at the altar as a pop star crashed her wedding, turning a private moment into a viral explosion of joy. It looked like magic, but behind the tears, a team of PR strategists was literally hacking your brain's dopamine loops. These $100,000 stunts might seem fancy to us, but deep down, they exploit our biological wiring using calculated surprises to fuel obsession. Did you know that? According to research, such surprises hit the brain with dopamine and oxytocin spikes that look a lot like falling in love. And behind many of them sit planners, sponsors, and six-figure PR stunts. But before we dive into all that, let's look at the moments that hook us. Dopamine bombs, disguised as kindness. If these surprises aren't just random acts of kindness, what are they actually doing to us? To understand the hook we just talked about, we have to look at what happens inside your brain the second that celebrity walks through the door. It isn't just excitement. It's chemical carpet bombing. When you see a face you've spent thousands of hours watching on a screen suddenly appear in your physical reality, your brain releases a massive, borderline dangerous surge of dopamine and oxytocin. It is the same chemical cocktail that hits you when you fall in love for the first time, or more accurately, when an addict gets a fix after a long period of withdrawal. Now here is where it gets interesting and, honestly, a bit dark. Scientists have been studying this for years, and they've found that for many fans, this isn't just a happy memory. It's the start of something called celebrity worship syndrome. Actual peer-reviewed studies are showing that this kind of intense worship interferes with a person's ability to handle real-life relationships. It creates this loop where the fan starts to value the connection with the star more than their own friends or family. And when that surprise moment ends, the crash is brutal. About 70% of fans who experience these high-intensity interactions report a massive emotional crash afterward. It's a literal post-event depression. Think about that for a second. You get the best day of your life, and the reward is a week-long descent into isolation. Take Drake, for example. There was this famous moment where he showed up at a hospital to hang out with a young fan. On the surface, it's beautiful. You see the photos, you see the smiles, and your heart melts. But for that kid, Drake isn't just a rapper anymore. He becomes a symbol of ultimate validation. The problem is that Drake eventually has to leave. He goes back to his mansion and his private jets, and the fan is left in a hospital bed with a dopamine system that has just been redlined. The contrast between that peak and the everyday reality of recovery is so sharp that it can actually slow down emotional healing. It's like being handed the keys to a Ferrari for 5 minutes and then being told you have to walk home in the rain. And get this, it isn't just Drake. Remember when Pharrell Williams organized that whole choreographed dance for a fan? It was polished, it was perfectly timed, and it looked like a spontaneous burst of community joy. But when you look at the mechanics of it, you realize how much pressure is on the fan to perform their happiness for the cameras. They have to react the right way to make the video go viral. If they don't cry or scream, the stunt fails. So now, the fan isn't just experiencing joy, they are managing a PR asset. It's a heavy burden to put on someone, especially if they're already struggling with something like a terminal illness or deep personal grief. I've always wondered if the celebrities themselves realize the kind of wreckage they leave behind in someone's neurochemistry. Because here's the thing, the bliss these fans feel is an exact mirror of addiction. You get the hit, you feel like you're on top of the world, and then the withdrawal hits you harder than a breakup. It's a cycle of sensation-seeking that often leads to deeper isolation because no real-life human can ever compete with the polished, high-definition version of a superstar. And if you think that is weird, hold on. It's about to get weirder. We like to think these stars just happen to be in the neighborhood, but that is rarely the case. There is a whole industry built around making these random encounters happen. We're talking about logistics teams, camera crews hidden in the bushes, and NDAs signed weeks in advance. It's a fan factory, and the product they're selling is your emotional vulnerability. They know exactly which buttons to push to get the most oxytocin out of you, because the more you love the star, the more you'll defend them when the next scandal breaks. And trust me, the 2025 scandals we're seeing now show exactly how much they're willing to spend to keep you hooked. Think about the cost of these free moments. When a celeb crashes a wedding, who pays for the extra security? Who manages the rights to the footage? It's rarely the celebrity. It's usually a sponsor or a film studio that needs to promote a new project. The fan's best day ever is actually just a line item in a marketing budget. It's a calculated exchange where the celebrity gets relatability and the fan gets a chemical spike that they'll be paying for emotionally for months. It makes you realize that in the world of high-level PR, there is no such thing as a free lunch. You might think that joy is free, but the bills always roll in next, and they're usually paid in tiers and targeted ads. Everything we've seen so far points to one uncomfortable truth. We aren't being treated as people. We're being treated as biological batteries for a brand's relevance. The industry has mastered the art of the kindness mask, and they're using it to hide the fact that they've turned human empathy into a commodity. But if you think the surprise was the end of the story, you're missing the most important part. Because once they have your attention, once they've spiked your dopamine, they have a direct line into your wallet and your worldview. You think joy is free? Think again, because the real bills are about to roll in. The PR puppet masters behind the curtain. We've found out that the dopamine crash is the hidden tax we pay for these moments. But who exactly is collecting the interest? Here is the thing that really changes how you look at those viral clips on your feed. When you see a celebrity randomly show up to surprise a fan, you aren't just watching a human connection. You are watching a multi-million-dollar corporate engine firing on all cylinders. Now, here is where it gets interesting, because when you pull back the curtain, you realize that about 80% of these spontaneous heartwarmers are actually ironclad brand campaigns. They aren't random at all. They are manufactured loyalty machines where the fan isn't the guest of honor, but the free billboard. Think about that for a second. We've all seen the videos of Justin Timberlake surprising a golfer or Billie Eilish showing up to a fan contest. They look like they just happened to be passing by and felt like making someone's day. But if you look at the fine print, you'll usually find names like MasterCard or iHeartRadio buried in the credits. There was one specific moment with Robert Downey Jr. that went absolutely everywhere. He showed up to give a young boy a 3D printed bionic Iron Man arm. It was incredibly moving. Literally, everyone was crying. But almost nobody talked about the fact that it was a massive tie-in with Omnicorp and a tech firm's promotional rollout. It was a beautiful moment, absolutely. But it was also a calculated PR masterclass that used a child's genuine joy to sell a corporate image of innovation and kindness. Now here is where it gets even more calculated. These stars aren't just doing this for the good vibes. They're doing it for the ledger. In many cases, these appearances are structured as charitable contributions or promotional expenses that provide massive tax perks for the celebrity's LLC. And get this, the brands often cover the entire bill, from the private jet that flies Britney Spears to Vegas for a surprise fan flight to the security teams that have to sweep the area before a star like Post Malone casually hands a $500 guitar to a kid in the front row. The celebrity gets to look like a saint, the brand gets millions of views, and the fan gets a memory that they'll likely use to defend that celebrity for the rest of their lives. It is a perfect closed-loop system of emotional manipulation. Picture this from the perspective of the production crew. You have a surprise happening in a coffee shop. To you, it looks like a star just walked in for a latte. But 10 feet away, behind a fake partition, there are 3 4K cameras, a sound engineer with a boom mic, and a legal representative holding a stack of NDAs and appearance releases. They need the fan to sign those papers before the video can even hit TikTok. If the fan's reaction isn't big enough, sometimes they'll even ask for a second take. Think about how that completely kills the magic. The second you're asked to act surprised for a second time, you aren't a fan anymore. You are an unpaid extra in a commercial for a billionaire's brand. And we see this pattern with the biggest names in the industry. Take Drake again, who is the absolute king of the spontaneous flex. When he does those high-profile hangouts or gives away stacks of cash, it's usually timed perfectly with an album drop or a tour announcement. It's about maintaining a specific narrative of being the man of the people while living a life that is completely inaccessible to those same people. It's a way to buy relatability when your actual life has become a series of gated communities and private islands. The surprise is the bridge that keeps us from realizing just how far apart our worlds actually are. The corporate cash fueling these moments is staggering. You'll have a sponsor like a major bank or a soft drink company putting up hundreds of thousands of dollars to facilitate one 10-minute meeting. Why? Because the ROI on a crying fan video is higher than any traditional commercial they could ever buy. You won't skip a video of your favorite artist surprising a terminally ill teenager, and the brand knows that. They are quite literally buying your empathy and attaching their logo to it. It's a form of emotional hijacking that turns our best human instincts into a marketing metric. But wait, it gets even weirder when you look at how these things are actually pitched to the stars. Talent agencies have entire departments dedicated to impact strategy. They look for fans who have compelling stories, not because they want to help, but because those stories have the highest viral potential. They are looking for the most photogenic grief or the most cinematic struggle. It's a heartless process disguised as a heart-centered mission. They'll pass over 1,000 fans who just really love the music to find the one fan whose life story will get the most engagement on Instagram. It's not about the fan's need. It's about the brand's narrative. And honestly, we're all complicit in it because we keep clicking. We want to believe in the magic. We want to believe that our idols are as kind as they seem in those 3-minute clips. We want to believe that if we just love them enough, maybe one day they'll show up at our door too. That hope is exactly what the PR puppet masters are banking on. It keeps us loyal, it keeps us buying tickets, and it keeps us from asking too many questions about the actual ethics of the industry. We are essentially paying for the privilege of being lied to in the most beautiful way possible. Here is the thing about these manufactured loyalty machines. They only work as long as the curtain stays closed. The second you realize that the random wedding crasher had a call sheet and a hair and makeup team waiting in a van outside, the joy starts to feel a little bit like a product. You start to see the gears turning. You start to notice the way the celebrity always happens to be holding the sponsor's product in the thumbnail. Once you see the strings, you can't unsee them. It's a spontaneous moment that was storyboarded 6 months ago in a glass office in Midtown Manhattan. So, we have the science of the brain hack and the mechanics of the corporate puppet strings. But what happens when the machine glitches? What happens when these carefully planned stunts don't just feel fake, but actually end up causing real, tangible harm? Pranks that pricked panic and backlash. When you try to manufacture spontaneous joy for a living, eventually the machine is going to break. And when it breaks, it doesn't just look awkward, it becomes a psychological car crash. We've seen the PR teams orchestrate the perfect awe moments, but there is a dark side to this industry where celebrities and their producers push the envelope so far that they stop creating memories and start triggering trauma. They call it a prank, but for the person on the receiving end, it's a one-way ticket to a panic attack. Now, here is where it gets truly disturbing. Think back to that infamous One Direction prank where the boys pretended to have a medical emergency in front of their fans. One of them actually faked a heart attack, collapsing while the cameras rolled. You can hear the screams in the footage, and they aren't the "I love Harry Styles" kind of screams. They are the sounds of people genuinely believing they are watching someone they love die. The producers thought it was hilarious. They wanted that raw, unfiltered reaction for the show. But they completely ignored the fact that they were inflicting a massive paralysis shock on their audience. It's a total grief flip. Your brain goes from 0 to 100 on the trauma scale, and then someone jumps out and shouts, "Gotcha!" like that's supposed to make the cortisol just disappear. But wait, it gets even weirder because this trend hasn't stopped. It's just evolved into something more aggressive. Take Austin Mahone, who went out in a fat suit to prank fans by being obnoxious and unrecognizable. The goal was to see if fans would still be nice to him if they didn't know he was famous. But what it actually did was create this incredibly uncomfortable environment where fans felt bullied by someone they technically supported. It wasn't about the fans, it was about the celebrity's ego, testing the loyalty of people who didn't even know they were being tested. It's a gross power dynamic that treats the audience like lab rats. And then we have the 2025 scandals that are still fresh on everyone's minds. Earlier this year, Burna Boy faced a massive wave of backlash after a surprise stunt at a show went south. He tried to pull a fan on stage for a viral moment, but the communication broke down. And instead of a hug, the fan was essentially ejected by security in a very public, very humiliating way. The internet didn't see a cool surprise. They saw an artist letting his team manhandle a paying supporter. It led to a total cancel moment on social media, proving that the joy to pain pipeline is a very real thing. When you treat people as props for your content, eventually they're going to stop playing along. There is a specific psychological flip that happens here. In a normal human interaction, trust is built over time. But with celebrities, that trust is parasocial. It's already fragile. When a star pranks a fan by making them feel fear, shame, or grief, they are literally exploiting that person's vulnerability. According to research on consumer brand relationships, these negative surprises can trigger actual symptoms of PTSD in extreme cases. One fan who was part of a major prank show famously said she felt gutted afterward, adding that while she was still a fan, she felt like something in the relationship had permanently snapped. It's like being pranked by your own parent. The betrayal cuts deeper because you never expected them to be the ones holding the knife. Think about the legal mess this creates. We're starting to see more and more lawsuits and distress claims coming out of these innocent pranks. Fans aren't just crying on camera anymore. They're calling their lawyers. If you're a production company and you cause someone to have a literal heart attack or a mental health spiral, just so you can get 1 million views on YouTube, you are playing a very dangerous game with liability. Ranker has entire lists of these panic-inducing celebrity pranks, where the audience voted them some of the most uncomfortable moments in TV history. It makes you wonder, at what point did we decide that a fan's mental health was a fair price to pay for a funny thumbnail? Where is the line? Is it still a prank if the person being pranked ends up in a therapist's office a week later? Or have we just become so desensitized to viral content that we don't care about the human cost anymore? I've seen fans who were surprised by their idols and ended up so overwhelmed they had to leave the event entirely. They were shaking, hyperventilating, and genuinely terrified. The PR team sees high engagement, but the person sees a nightmare. If you were in that position, if a celebrity you loved put you through a terrifying prank just for a viral video, would you be the one calling a lawyer? Because here is the truth that the fan factory doesn't want you to know. These pranks trigger the same physiological responses as a real assault. Your body doesn't know the difference between a fake heart attack and a real one. It doesn't know that the emergency is just for a TV show. It just knows fear. And once that fear is triggered, it sticks. The joy that follows when the prank is revealed is often just a massive release of adrenaline, which the brain misinterprets as happiness. It's a chemical lie. We've seen the calculated corporate campaigns, and we've seen the pranks that turned into nightmares. It's easy to get cynical and think that every single interaction is just a hollow stunt. But is that entirely true? Even in an industry built on manipulation and dopamine hacks, can a moment between a star and a fan ever be genuinely pure? Or is the purity just another layer of the mask that we haven't peeled back yet? Rare gems and the fading magic. After looking at the corporate puppet strings and those pranks that basically border on psychological warfare, it's easy to feel like the whole concept of a celebrity surprise is just a rotting corpse wrapped in expensive PR gift wrap. But here is the thing that makes this whole industry so confusing. Every once in a while, something happens that feels actually, genuinely real. There are these rare gems in the mud that remind us why we cared in the first place. But even these moments carry a weight that most of us aren't ready to talk about. Now here is where it gets interesting. If you want to see what actual kindness looks like without a brand manager breathing down your neck, you have to look at Johnny Depp. For years, Depp has been doing something that almost no other A-lister at his level does. He travels with his full Jack Sparrow costume in his luggage just so he can drop into children's hospitals at a moment's notice. There are no cameras from a film studio there to promote a new Pirates movie, no MasterCard logo on the wall, and often the public doesn't even find out about it until months later, when a parent posts a blurry photo on Facebook. He'll stay for hours, staying in character the entire time, just to give a kid a few minutes of escape from a sterile hospital room. It's one of those rare cases where the celebrity is using their fame as a tool for someone else's benefit, rather than using a fan as a tool for their own brand. And then you have Celine Dion. If you haven't seen the recent footage of her with Coldplay in 2025, it is absolutely heartbreaking and beautiful at the same time. She's been fighting a brutal, very public battle with stiff person syndrome, a condition that has literally stolen her ability to perform the way she once did. When she showed up at a Coldplay show recently, it wasn't a stunt to sell tickets. The show was already sold out. It was a moment of mutual respect between legends, and you could see it in her face. It felt human because it was vulnerable. It wasn't about a gotcha moment. It was about the shared experience of music when everything else is falling apart. That's the kind of magic that the fan factory tries to replicate but always fails at because you can't script genuine struggle. But wait, even these pure moments have a dark side that we usually ignore. We've talked about how these surprises spike our dopamine, and even when Ed Sheeran drops into a hospital to sing to a fan, he is still, unintentionally, reinforcing that celebrity worship syndrome we mentioned earlier. According to research from the Journal of Business Research and several psychiatric studies, these high-intensity positive interactions can actually warp a fan's psychological state for years. When a god descends from the screen to touch your life, the real world starts to look incredibly dull in comparison. The fan might feel a temporary high, but the long-term effect is often an increased sense of isolation from the people who actually know them. You start living for the next hit of celebrity validation, which is a dangerous place for the human brain to be. Here is a thought that really bothers me. The more we learn about how these moments are made, the harder it is to tell the difference between a Johnny Depp and a corporate-sponsored stunt. We're moving into a future where that magic is being eroded by technology at a terrifying speed. As we head into 2026, we're seeing the rise of AI deepfakes that are so convincing you could have a celebrity surprise you on a video call, and you would never know it was a bot. Imagine getting a personalized message or a surprise visit that looks and sounds exactly like your favorite artist. But it's actually just a data mining algorithm designed to get you to sign up for a subscription. Trust is the currency of these surprises, and that currency is being devalued every single day. Think about the Robert Downey Jr. Iron Man arm moment I mentioned earlier. That was 2015, and the scale of that interaction, the physical artifact, the presence, the emotion, has rarely been replicated since. Why? Because it's expensive and it's risky. It's much easier for a PR team to just have a star do a random TikTok dance with a fan and call it a day. We are moving away from tangible, life-changing acts of kindness and towards snackable viral moments that are designed to be consumed in 15 seconds and forgotten. The magic isn't just fading, it's being streamlined for maximum efficiency and minimum cost. Now, here is where it gets really weird. I was reading a piece in Good Housekeeping about how fans are starting to push back. We're seeing a new trend where fans are actually calling out forced surprises. People are becoming hyper-aware of the camera angles and the lighting that look just a little bit too professional for a spontaneous meeting. In 2026, I predict we're going to see a massive authenticity crash. The public is getting tired of being used as props. We're going to see celebrities who try to pull these stunts getting called out for being cringe or exploitative. The fan factory is running out of steam because we've finally seen the blueprints. Every legend has a hero. But what happens when you realize your hero is just a brand manager in a cool jacket? It makes me wonder, which recent surprise did you see that actually changed how you felt about a celebrity? Was it a moment that felt real, like the Celine Dion appearance? Or did it feel like a calculated play for engagement? I want to know if you can still feel that magic, or if the aha moment from seeing the corporate strings has ruined it for you forever. Because once you see how the machine works, it's almost impossible to go back to being just a casual fan. Here is the uncomfortable, undeniable truth. Even the purest surprises warp us. They keep us looking upward at people who don't know we exist, instead of looking around at the people who actually love us. The magic is substance. The industry is more than happy to keep supplying it as long as we keep paying the price. True kindness can survive the machine, sure, but it's getting harder to find and even harder to believe in. We're living in a world where your favorite star might be a hero, a ghost, or a corporate hologram. and the line between them is getting thinner every single day. The magic is fading because we've realized that surprise is often just another word for advertisement. We've unmasked the PR masters, and we've looked at the neurochemistry of the crash. So, where does that leave us? Are we just cynical observers now? Or is there a way to reclaim the genuine connection that used to make these stories matter? Because if we can't find a way to distinguish the heart from the hype, we're just waiting for the next reset in a cycle of manufactured joy and inevitable disappointment. And that brings us to the final realization. Everything we've covered, from the dopamine bombs to the AI threats of 2026, points to a single inevitable conclusion about our relationship with fame. We've been participating in an experiment that we never signed up for. And as the technology gets better and the PR gets sharper, the cost of that best day ever is only going to go up. So, the next time you see a celebrity walk into a room and the crowd starts to scream, I want you to look past the star. Look at the cameras, look at the logos, and then look at the people. Because that's where the real story is. What are your thoughts on these recent findings? Are they facts or fiction?